All right, everyone, welcome back to Course of Action. My guest today is an international best-selling author of psychological suspense. Her books have been published in over 23 different foreign languages and they've been optioned for film and television. She's also a graduate of Brown University as well as Georgetown Law School, and her newest book, What Remains, is a smash hit, in my opinion. It's excellent. Please welcome Wendy Walker. Wendy, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh yeah, thank you. I know, uh, big tour, maybe the longest book tour I've seen, and thank you for carving out the time to do this. And
Yeah.
I know your schedule is busy, but let's kind of talk about the book tour to kind of kick it off. How's it going?
It's good. I had a little break for the 4th of July holiday. A break from the tour, but not from life. I had a huge family reunion. And now back on the tour again. It's not I think just one plane ride and one train ride, and then the rest of it's driving. So I have about 10 more events in July, and they're all on my website, and I post about them all the time on my social media. But yeah, it's been great. I think this was the first book that's come out in print since COVID. I had an Audible original come out in 2021, and before that, it was a book smack in the middle of COVID,
Mm,
September 2020. And so I had for that book, I really did a lot of social media stuff. I did a lot of interviewing, podcasts. I posted videos, and so I sort of built up this sort of database of resources for that kind of launch. And then when this launch came around, I ended up sort of digging into all of my resources and doing both. And it just got to be this crazy schedule
yeah.
because I reached out to everyone that I could think of. And everyone was so generous and responding and inviting me to their store or their library, or authors willing to be in conversation with me, inviting me to interview them for their books. So it got really busy. But yeah, the best thing about it has been really connecting with bookstores and readers, of course, and also my author friends that I haven't seen in person for a long time. So it's been amazing, actually.
Well, that's cool. So, is it first book that's been in print since COVID?
Yes, because Don't Look for Me came out in 2020. And then the next book that came out was American Girl, which was first released in audio, and it's actually coming to print in October for the first time. So this was the first print book that was like
Okay.
a launch. Yeah. Mhm.
Wow, wow, and you're doing it big. I think I saw like 30 different stops.
28 events. Yeah,
Yeah,
20.
like I've seen the pictures on social media. It looks like people have had no problem coming out and checking it out.
Thank you.
And the book is great. You really had me. I'll tell you kind of where you had me off air because I don't want to spoil anything now. But you had me going in a direction. I was like, I know what it is. I have this figured out, and I was wrong, obviously.
Yay!
But fantastic story. Let's
Thank you.
talk. You went to Brown and Georgetown, studied law. I assume that you went into law for a little while after graduation. Let's talk kind of like how did Brown and Georgetown are no joke. They're not pushover schools. This is serious stuff here. What drove you into studying law?
Yeah, oh my gosh. It's been a winding road. So I started out in investment banking after Brown. I worked at Goldman Sachs in mergers and acquisitions, and that was not the best fit for me. I think I liked the work, but not the lifestyle, and I wasn't motivated. And this is, you learn, right, as you go through your early years after college, maybe even in college, about what motivates you.
Mhm.
And what you think might motivate you doesn't always end up being the thing. So I thought I was motivated by um, wanting to be financially secure, that was the most important thing, and that it didn't matter what I did, and then I did love numbers and I loved economics. Um, but when I got there, I realized that that's not all that I need more to motivate me to work that many hours a week. And so I went into the law expecting to work in public interest of all things, like sort of going the other way. I'm just going to be
Mm.
really broke for the rest of my life, but love what I do. So because I became, became quite a feminist at Brown, and I was very interested in women's issues, women's rights, and so I envisioned myself being sort of an activist lawyer at the ACLU or something like that. And then, of course, I got to law school, and I, had a lot of debt with loans, and then I met my future husband, and I just, I kind of got off the treadmill a little bit. And I did practice corporate litigation for a few years to try to pay down some of my loans. And then I had my first son, and then everything just stopped. I stopped practicing law. I was stay home mom, and that's when I started writing. So it was kind of a go, 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 go. And
Yeah.
then just this realization that I need to stop. I want to build a family. And that's what I really need right now in my life. And it's a time to be doing it. Um, and there was just something very powerful in me that wanted to take a step away from everything that I had been doing. So I did end up doing a year of volunteer work at the ACLU, but I never, it sort of got sidetracked a little bit by, financial necessity, and then life choices.
So did you always want to write a book? Was that like a long-term goal and it was going to be on, the bucket list, while you were
Yeah.
practicing law, or was that kind of a realization, a revelation when you were home with the first kid and you said, I still got to do something. I should write a book. How did that
The
writing
latter.
journey go?
Thank you for that, because yes, the latter, but I always feel like I need to ask permission to say this, but no, I did not always want to write a book. I never envisioned that I would ever write anything fictional or creative. I was, which isn't to say that I wasn't a creative person. I was actually a competitive figure skater in my youth, and that was very artistic. And I, did a lot of dancing and, um, the choreography and all of that. But the way that I grew up in my family structure, it wasn't that we were, told not to be creative, but there was just this. It was in our blood to be. Sort of seeking to do better and be secure. I came from a family of immigrants from many different countries. My parents were the first generation to be born here. My siblings and I were the first generation to go to college, with the exception of one aunt. And so it was, it really was like, okay, then you do better. You do better than we did, and then your children will do better than you did, and that's
Right.
how it and, so I think it was just in my, in the ether really, to just seek something that was secure and certain. And nothing in the arts is that way, as anyone will tell you in any or sports. I don't know why I was figure skating, but anyway, so yeah, so I was home with my son, and I really thought, the thought process was, what can I do that I can do from home? Because I really had this powerful instinct to stay home and raise my kids. Not all the time, but I thought, until they're all in school. But, if you have three kids and you wait till they're all in school, that's 10 years plus, right? Because,
Yeah.
they're 5 or 4 and 3 years in between each child, or a couple of years. You're looking at about 10 years of
Yeah.
not working full time, and there was no internet then. I mean, we still had like the plug. I'm dating myself, but there was the, you'd plug something into the wall, into the phone line, and then you would hear
Oh
"ee," and you'd
yeah.
get AOL, right? You probably don't remember that either, but there was no internet. There was no, online anything. And if you worked from home, you were either doing something creative, or you were writing a novel. Not that that's not creative, but you were like making jewelry or something, or you were
Yeah.
writing a novel. Like there was
Yeah.
no, you didn't do any kind of profession from home because you couldn't communicate. You couldn't send a document. There's no way to
Yeah, there
send
was
it.
just no the connection, the infrastructure and the network was not. It
It
couldn't
was
sustain it.
technology.
Yeah,
100. We had cell phones, but not a lot of coverage in places. So we were still
yep.
using landlines. deadlines, and, you couldn't send a text message, you couldn't send a document at all, you had to hard mail it, so I thought, "Well, what could I do from home that would be leading to a career?" And I thought, "Well, maybe I'll write a book." And it actually was John Grisham who inspired me because he was a lawyer and he became an author, and I thought, "Well, how hard can this be?"
Oh yeah, I
Right?
love John Grisham.
And I loved legal thrillers, and so actually the first attempt at a novel was a legal thriller. I think it had a really great plot, but I did not know how to write a novel, and I learned that the hard way. It was really a smackdown after, like,
Yeah.
spending a couple of
Oh,
years trying to draft a novel and then realized I did not know what I was doing, and I had got mad respect for writers and the tools that you need to write a novel, and I feel like I've been learning really ever since and
same.
constantly adding to my toolbox.
Yeah, I wrote a nonfiction because I thought I'm going to do the nonfiction. That's going to be the hard one, is getting the knowledge down on paper and organizing a leadership book into principles and things people can learn, like a curriculum in over 200 pages. I thought this is going to be the hardest one. Telling a story and having fun over here, that's going to be cake. You know, oh, I was able to brain dump and get the nonfiction, and then when I started on fiction and I had like people read it, they're like, "Dude, do you like know what you're doing?" Like, no, I'm figuring it out. Like, it
Ah,
it has been carrying a story for 2, 3, 400 pages and making sure there's no plot holes. I mean, you know way better than I do, but
yeah.
no
Oh
plot
my god.
holes, character development. Like, you got to carry the story and not lose people, subplots. Like, wow, it's way harder than I thought. I have
Ah, and you have
huge
the story,
respect.
and then you have how to tell the story, whose
Yes.
point of view. I mean, when I first like that, and I'll just tell this story quickly for those aspiring writers out there who will feel miles ahead of me. Um, but yeah, so I wrote this whole novel and I knew it didn't read like a novel and I didn't know why. I'm like, what is going on here? I could not figure it out. With all of my training and writing legal briefs, I wrote briefs that were going up to appellate level courts. I mean, I
Wow.
knew how to write, but I did not know how to write fiction. So I found a writing professor through a friend of a friend, who I sent the manuscript in the mail, and he read it and he sent it back with comments, and he called me on my landline to tell me that, you have a great plot, but you don't know how to write a novel. And I'll just tell you the most embarrassing thing that I did wrong. So I had like chapter one was the whole setup, like this young lawyer at this big firm. He's working on a case, and he gets a call and he discovers something untoward in the law firm, sort of like the firm, right? So now oh no, he's discovered the secret file. And so he's in danger and all this excitement in chapter one. And then chapter two, he's going to tell his coworker because she's going to be involved in the plot. And of course, they're going to have a little love story on the side. And so all of chapter two is dialogue of him telling her everything that happened in chapter one. Because in my mind, well, that's what would happen
Yeah.
in real life, and I'm just depicting my fictional life of what happens in the story. And the writing professor said all of chapter two needs to be cut to one line, which is Sam tells Justine everything that happened in chapter one. Period. Not in those words. And I was like, you can do that? That's allowed? I had absolutely no idea that that's what narration was for. Like, think about that. It's ridiculous that I
It
could not
is.
glean that from all of my studying, and I studied all the John Grisham novels to try to understand and teach myself how to write. Reading all those books, I could not figure out that that's what he was doing. It was like this mystery. So, yeah, lots
That's
of mad
tough.
respect, and from then on, I knew there was so much I didn't know, and I am always on the lookout for new tools.
I think the best thing that I've done is given people stuff that I've written and just said, "Hey, read this and tell me what you think," just so they can find that stuff.
Yeah,
Just so they can say, "Hey, you head hopped here," or why is this person saying this ahead of this person? Just to
yeah.
find that stuff that you don't see because you got a tunnel vision
Thank
of the story. It,
Yes,
it's been the
so
best
funny.
tool for me is beta readers because they see it differently than you do. It's that second set of eyes. It sounds cliche, but it works, and um, It's
Yes,
such a
and you're
big.
always trying to think about how is the reader experiencing this book the way I'm telling it? How are they experiencing this story? What information have I already told them one way or another through one point of view or a different point of view? And do I need to repeat that information or not? Do they need to hear it again? All of those things that make it an enjoyable process of reading, of digesting the story, not just having the story, but the way it's read and or listened to is just as important.
So when you wrote that first book and you're at home and you really go, okay, I'm gonna have to dig into this, really hone myself and write something. When you got that first publishing deal, like what was the feeling of like it had to have been a feeling of relief because you kind of hedged life and said I'm going to stay home, I'm going to make this work. You get the publishing deal, how'd it feel?
Well, so there were two different publishing moments for me. The first was, after the legal thriller, I got an agent. That book didn't sell, but I wrote another book and it was general fiction. Nobody knows about these books because they're on my Amazon page and they're on Goodreads because you can never get rid of them there. But and I love these books, but they're just not the same genre. So they're like not on my website. Um, but they were just general fiction about suburban women because that's what I was interested in by the time I sat down to write those books. I had 3 children at that time. I had been immersed in suburbia, and I was fascinated by the culture and all of the stories of women's lives and how they changed. And so I wrote these 2 novels, and I got a publishing deal with St. Martin's. But it was not a big publishing deal. It was like a small publishing deal, the kind where you spend your entire advance on your website, your own PR people, flying yourself around to book events that your friends are hosting in every city where they live, you know,
The
really
real
like,
hustle.
yeah, almost hand selling your book, right? Copy by copy. But when I did get that first interest before I saw what the numbers were and sort of got, schooled on what that would look like, um, I was very excited because I didn't understand the publishing business. And this was the second thing I had to learn. I had to learn how to write, and then I had to learn about the publishing business. And so years later, after those 2 books didn't do well, I went back to practicing law in the area of family law, and I learned a lot of psychology. I kept writing on the side, but it was definitely now sidetracked. My kids were all in school. I went back to work full time, and I as a divorce attorney, and I wrote in the whenever I could. And I found a new agent, and eventually found my way to writing psychological thrillers. And when that book sold, that was a watershed moment because I had been writing for 17 years.
Mm.
And this was going to be the last book that I wrote because I just did not have any time. I had, 3 kids. I was a single parent, a co-parenting. I didn't parent alone, but I had my own household. And, there just wasn't a lot of time to write. And so I felt like I had to pick a horse. I had to either really lean into my legal career or sell a book for enough money to stop practicing law. But I could not do all of these things and have any quality of life for my kids. So yeah, All Is Not Forgotten was going to be my last book. And I had learned enough about writing and enough about the publishing industry to feel that if I didn't succeed, that this would be kind of a good sign from the universe that this was not meant to be, because I felt like I finally learned pretty much all I need to try to do it right this time. So I found a genre that was sort of cresting, and it was a genre that I was really well suited for. I'd learned so much psychology, and I loved writing in first person. I loved writing a dark, unreliable narrator, and it was just a perfect fit. And when that book sold, it was a 5-way auction. We sold the movie rights the same week. We still had preemptive foreign rights the same week. It was a big watershed moment for me, and that established my career. And I feel like I've been sort of riding that wave in ebbs and flows ever since. So that was huge, and a
That is
huge
huge.
relief.
That's
But also one
huge.
of those, like, it's like, after 17 years, I guess it would maybe be like, holding on to the edge of a cliff. and then someone finally pulls you up and you're like, "Oh, thank God." But you're also thinking, "Man, that was hard," you know?
Yeah.
I almost stopped writing, like, I almost fell off this cliff, nick of time, like, so not pure euphoria, but also like, "Ooh, that was close." It
Yeah.
felt like
But it's a good lesson for anybody listening that is aspiring to be a writer in any genre. Don't
yes,
quit because it could be right there. It
could
could
be right
be on the tip of your fingers. I
there,
mean,
yes.
and you could have that moment like you where you land the deal, you sell the movie rights right then and there. Like it just the door cracks open and it's wide open, you know.
It's
So
right book at the right time. And so what they say, when hard work meets opportunity, right? There's no luck. It's just work and opportunity. And you just sometimes you just have to keep working hard until the right opportunity coincides with your hard work. And
mhm.
that was what happened to me. And it was a long, long road.
And
Yeah.
then it explodes.
It exploded.
International best-selling, 23 different foreign languages. Like now it's a thing. How do you kind of look back at it now and go, at that moment, now where you're at, how do you use that kind of as a way to keep driving yourself?
Oh my gosh. Well, after that, it's still a journey. So some people in those watershed moments get catapulted like to the very top of the mountain and they just stay there and they, a book a year, they're always on the New York Times bestseller list. Everything is smooth sailing. For me, it's been kind of book by book. Some books have been well received. Others, they've all sold pretty well. But I feel like I'm still in the fight. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like I'm still, I really try to be careful about what I write, what products I'm putting out there, and I feel like I have to work. I be on social media, make sure it's very competitive. I have to be out there. I have to be trained in a sense, like still training. I can't just, you know, sit back and rest on anything. So I guess I look back at that and I think that it's really just staying in the game and sticking with it and realizing there will be highs and lows and very grateful that that book got me to a place where I have a career, really, and that I can do this full time. But I have days, my friends will all tell you this is 100% true. I have days where I wake up filled with doubt and go on ladders.com and look for jobs just to reassure myself that I can work. I'm like, okay, there's a job I
Uh,
could do. Okay, I'm okay. I'll be okay. Because it's a really precarious, like, it's such a crazy business, It's such like, oh, oh my gosh. I'm so sorry.
no,
I
you're
hope you can
fine.
edit that out. I have like terrible allergies.
Oh yeah, it's
It's
that
not
time of the
normal
year here. Oh,
commentary to the publishing industry. But yeah, it's a crazy business and it's think about, a profession where it doesn't matter how long you've worked at it. It doesn't matter how great your product has been. It doesn't matter how reliable you are, how hardworking you are. It doesn't matter. All that matters is how your last book sold
hmm,
and what people think of your new book. That's it. You don't get any, you might get some street cred, but you don't get any points. You don't get any loft, you know, um, for being in it a long time. It's just looking back at what you've done lately. And very few professions are like that. I think most professions, your experience, your contacts, your everything, your knowledge, all
those
of that
intangibles, all those
already,
things.
yeah, they all weigh in. Or even if you're just working towards a pension, those years count. Every year counts towards
Yeah,
your pension, your retirement. Writing is not like that. And that is, so you kind of have to love it and you have to be willing to sort of handle that kind of uncertainty that's going to probably persist for, for the most of your life, except for, the rare few who are really, become household names and are extremely established and really never have to worry about, falling out of the public eye or, having enough income that it's not, and necessary to sustain, your sort of your lifestyle. But most writers are not in that position.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, you got to sell a lot of books to try to make up 50, 60 grand a year. You know, if a medium, even 35 to 40, let's think of that as a basic salary in some parts of the country. That's still a lot of books that have to be
Yeah,
sold in order to replace just your current standard of living. If you want to improve, you know,
yeah,
that's a lot. So, and it doesn't happen overnight, like you've said, like other authors have said. It takes a grind. It's a hustle. It's not going to just
it is.
boom and happen.
And
That's for the 1%.
yeah, and the amount of work, I mean, I've never worked harder in my life than I have, um, at this job. There's no, yes, it's wonderful to have flexibility with my kids, and that was a gift that it gave me. But I work every day. I almost never take a day off. If I take a day off, I'm on vacation or I'm with my kids. I don't just take a day off and say, "What am I going to do today? I guess I'll binge watch some shows or I'll just go to the beach." I never do that. If I don't have plans and something to do with my family or being on vacation, which is also rare, I am always working. I don't work necessarily all day, but I'm working, even on my sort of days off, I'll work 4 to 6 hours writing, social media, some kind of, promotional stuff, or I'll be reading someone else's book to blurb or taking
Hmm.
pictures with books for so everything. It's a pretty intense job.
So
So,
let's kind of talk about that, about your writing process. I know a lot of authors in like the military and spy espionage genre, when they've released a book, they're halfway through the next one
yes,
and
yeah.
getting ready to turn that in. What's Wendy Walker's kind of process and time frame for that?
Yeah, I'm by the time a book is out, I usually have another book done or in the final edits. I also I have started doing almost a book a year with Audible. So 2021, maybe every 2 years, I came out with American Girl in December 2021. And so I guess it'll be 2 years. So in 2024, early, there will be another book with them called Mad Love, which is absolutely love how this book turned out, and it's really an audio play, like an old-fashioned radio play, a full cast of characters. It's about 3 to 4 hours long in length, and it will have sound effects,
Ooh.
and, yeah, there's narration, but it's not a typical narration. It's meant for audio only, and, yeah, it's a really fun piece. It's sort of like watching maybe a TV show without seeing it, just listening to it.
Hmm.
And, um, and that's sort of how I think about it. So imagine like your favorite spy drama and, instead of seeing it, you're just hearing the dialogue and the sound effects. And then of course you have to figure out how to write that to bring into the dialogue everything that the listener needs to know to picture a scene. But yeah, that was really fun. So I'm hoping to do more of those with them. And then I write a novel. I'm trying to write a novel a year, every year and a half.
So
So yeah, I'm always
what does your like sit down writing process look like? Like I know a lot of people, like Kyle Mills, he'll sit down and he'll write a 20, 30,000 word outline. And then when he goes to sit down and write, he'll just pick a chapter and start writing. What is your process like? How's your approach and your attack to that?
Yeah, I'm very much an outliner, a plotter. So I start usually with the general plot and I actually draw it out on a piece of paper with arrows and boxes with the characters. This is how they're related. And I just scribble notes as they come, but I try to visualize the story and how everyone is related and how the things are going to all fit together. And then I type up what I call a list of disclosures. And these are all the things that I've scribbled down that have to happen to make the plot work. So it'll be like, you know, finds the red jacket, sees the blue truck, and then and then this character learns about seeing the blue truck. So there's sometimes 2 or 3 points to every disclosure when the reader finds out, when one character finds out, when one character tells another character. So those are 3 things that have to happen. So it's basically a list of everything that has to happen in the book to make the plot work.
Hmm.
And then from there, I start doing a chapter outline. And really, all that's in the chapter outline is going to be those things where they need to happen, because I need to know the sequence where they happen so that they fit together, so that, it makes sense who finds what out first. Obviously, someone can't tell someone about the blue truck if they haven't already seen the blue truck. So there's an order to the disclosures. And then from there, I flesh out the chapters a little bit more in the outline. I try to figure out, well, what should be happening next for the characters? Where would they go next? Where would they be next? Where do we need to see them? Do we need to see them at home? Do I want to establish some, sort of the interior life of this character with a spouse or a partner or a child? Or do I want to show them at work, or do I want to show them at the grocery store? Because what types of things in this about this character do I need to bring out? Maybe I need to show them fighting for a parking space, so you kind of get a sense of the town they're in and how they react to people. Whatever it is, I sort of use that each chapter as a vehicle for that kind of character building. And then that's all I do for the chapters. So it'll be, they're in the supermarket, these things need to be said, or these things need to be remembered or thought about, because I need these disclosures to happen. But this is where they're going to happen. And most of my chapters are in scenes. I have very few chapters that move from one scene to another. I don't know why I do that actually. It's just the way I think. I think about a scene. So if multiple things are happening, it's going to be in backstory, flashbacks, or conversation about something else that happened, but you're usually set in one place in each chapter. And then usually sit down to write at that point with the outline with all the chapters. And from there, that's when I kind of flesh out the more about the characters when I start to write, and the dialogue. And then sometimes things will change. Like in What Remains, I was writing just a passage between my main character Elise and her husband, and all of a sudden I just felt like they needed more conflict, and I started writing about this affair he had 4 years ago, and I was like, I guess he had an affair 4 years ago, because I'm sensing that I just was wanting more in that chapter. I
So
was
that
wanting
was
more
an
content.
that was an addition. That wasn't
Yes, and then I
the
had to
part of the
go and
normal plot.
no, I had to go back and weave it.
Wow.
And it was like, "Oh, that's so cool, because now I can use it in the plot." And so I changed the plot for that. Yeah, that's the cool. So when people say, like, plotters or pantsers, the time when I am a pantser, like flying by the seat of my pants, is just in those moments when I have like an aha moment as I'm writing. And my best plot twists have come up sometimes when I'm in the writing process, and your mind is sort of released from thinking about the structure and the plot, and it's thinking about like other things, and then your imagination can come alive a little bit more, and just a thought will pop into your head. What if this character did that? And then all of a sudden your character's doing that, and then all sorts of crazy things follow. That's the really fun stuff. But I can't get there unless I have a really firm structure. I get anxiety. I look at the page like, I don't know what to write. So, and then I'll go down rabbit holes. I will go down, I mean, actually What Remains, I tried writing without a plot outline for the very first time. And 50 pages in, she was still in the department store.
Oh
I
wow.
mean, I was just yeah, just still in the department, because I found all these interesting things that I found interesting to write about. And then when I took a step back and read them, I thought, "This is like, the plot hasn't moved at all. I need this
Yeah.
plot to move. Like, this is a
We
thriller. What
got to
am I
get out of
doing?"
the department store and let the
Yeah,
drama really begin, because that's when it rolls out. And um,
yes, that's what it comes out. So, yes, it was interesting in the department store, but that's not what the book was supposed to be about. And so to keep myself disciplined as well, I have to have the structure.
Well, let's talk a little more about what remains. We're going to try to keep it a little spoiler free. That way people go buy the book
Okay.
and find out for themselves. But um, I think the dynamic between the husband and Elise um, was really interesting because it was almost like they had moved on past the affair
Yeah.
and they were comfortable with each other, but that there was like that small percentage that wasn't. So it's like
Yeah.
she had a false sense of security, but she still
Mhm.
looked forward to it. In those
Yeah.
moments, she looked to him, and it was like, "There's my strength," but then she'd question it,
Yeah.
and that internal struggle. But then she started questioning other things, and as you read the story,
Yeah.
you get pointed into certain directions, and you go, "Man, this is a law enforcement officer. She's supposed to have her stuff together, but she constantly
Right.
struggles to do that." How did you like? How did you get in her mind and kind of do
Yeah.
the scrambled egg thing, but not to the point where she couldn't reel herself back in and stay focused on her main objective?
Yeah. So really this book is a study in trauma to this detective. So, you know, it starts with a shooting in a department store, but it's not about that. It's about the trauma that that caused to her. And after doing a lot of research on trauma and what happens in the aftermath, uh, I I really started developing this character, and I had a wonderful resource in a real cold case detective who's been advising me for years on the sort of cop stuff in my books. But this time, I really talked to her for a couple of hours about her job and what it feels like and the emotions that that you cycle through and where do you put those. So the title of the book, What Remains, is really about what remains of a person after they go through a trauma like this. Not childhood trauma, not long-term, abusive trauma in a relationship, but a sudden, impactful
Hmm.
trauma. And what was so fascinating that I read and that I incorporated into the book and gave me the freedom to have Elise do all these make some not so great decisions and kind of get a little unhinged in protecting herself from this dangerous man who starts becomes obsessed with her after the shooting, when she saves his life, was the fact that when you're in a trauma like that, you it changes you. But if you're not physically injured, most people who haven't been through something like that just think, well, you should be grateful, right? Aren't you so glad that you weren't hurt? And don't you now see life through like rose-colored glasses, like everything is so much brighter, and I'm gonna enjoy life so much more because I came close to death and appreciate everything more. And in her case, everyone's hailing her a hero, and her family, her husband doesn't understand. Why can't you accept that in yourself? Why can't you embrace that you are a hero and not necessarily be happy about it, but why are you so tortured?
Yeah.
And the reality is that when you suffer a trauma like that, it creates an emotional response that basically puts your fight or flight instincts on red alert all the time. Because now something that we know in the back of our minds can happen, a shooting in public, is similar to a car crash, right? And if you've been in a car crash, you will have a different reaction to being in a car for the rest of your life. There will be PTSD and there will be a long, slow recovery to probably when you can ever even get in a car. And even just feeling like safe in everyday life where there are perils all around us all the time. And so people who have been through a trauma like that, it's not the way they're think that they can't think about what happened correctly.
Hmm.
They have now an emotional memory that other people do not have. So they carry that with them, this emotional memory and knowledge of what it feels like when bad things happen. And so their brains are always on the lookout, always on red alert, looking to prevent that from happening again and to keep them safe because now there is this entrenched emotional memory, which again, most of us don't have. So that disconnect from other people creates isolation and loneliness and can cause severe depression, because no one understands why you are feeling the way you are, and maybe you don't even understand it if you don't have proper support. So there are all these stages to get your brain recalibrated for normal life, where these things can happen but usually don't, and we sort of just live with the knowledge of it, not on red alert, but just going through our day. To get back to that takes active trauma recovery treatment. So when I read that, I thought, okay, well, Elise is going to be unhinged for this whole book because she's not, you know, she's in danger from this man now, and so she's, and suffering from this trauma, and she feels alone, isolated, ramped up, right,
Hmm.
and then she has all these mad forensic skills that she can use. So she's kind of, a loose cannon, but that's what made it so fun to write her.
But I love that she has these forensic skills, but I don't feel like she ever like relies on them. I feel like there's points in time where she tries to, and then she's thrown for kind of just enough of a loop
Yeah.
that it throws her off, and then she's not trusting that instinct anymore. And I think she's
Well, yeah,
desperately trying to get to that throughout the whole story, and that's because that's her
yeah,
normalcy. But she can't quite get there because puzzle pieces are just not connecting like they should.
yeah. Well, and I mean, this was the other thing that was fun in the book is that the man, I'll call him Wade, not really a spoiler, but the man whose life she saves, who becomes obsessed with her, he has studied her online classes. So she taught forensic psychology, and all of her coursework is online, available online, and she's been updating it for years with real cases. So everything she knows, he knows.
Yeah, I loved
So
that part.
even when she goes to use her skills, he has already figured out that she was going to use them and has figured out a way around them. So, yes, so her normal life, she's ahead of the game with all of these skills, but now he has the exact same knowledge that she does, because everything she's learned, she's put online for her students. And so that made it really fun to write the cat and mouse game between them. And, the end, like, I just loved writing the end because I won't say what happens, but, the final showdown between them is really about wit and intelligence and outmaneuvering each other. And they're almost in the same brain, not only because of the knowledge, but because they both went through this trauma together.
Hmm.
And so they are both ramped up with an adrenaline, fight or flight chemicals surging through them, not caring about the consequences. And yeah, it's like a recipe for a full on explosion, between them.
So, What Remains is out now.
Yes.
You're on the book tour for the next couple of months. I think you got some more stops in July,
Yeah,
August, September, even
yeah,
into
it winds
October.
down. Yeah, it winds down. But yes, I have 10 more in July, one I think in August, and then a couple in September and a couple in October. So yeah, you can check it out on my website. All the events are there with the links.
So, the book tour is winding down into this fall. You said you got an audiobook coming out. What else is on the 2024 horizon for you?
Yeah, in October of this year, American Girl will be out. Um, and that was the Audible original that originally was released in 2021. It's one of my favorite stories that I've written. It's about an autistic 17-year-old girl who witnesses a crime in a small town, in Pennsylvania, and has to use all of her skills to sort of keep herself safe, and her family and friends. And it's an adult mystery, but it will definitely appeal to young adults as well. And I love this story. It's a in the end sort of a feel good story. It's just got a lot of like emotion and heart, and that will be out in print for the first time October 17th. And then my next Audible audio play will be out in 2024 called Mad Love. That's sort of Dirty John meets the Tinder swindler meets like my sort of Hallmark psychological thriller brand. And then 2024, Still wrangling a novel, but hope to have that finished and out in 2024, early 2025. So yeah, lots of lots of things
Yeah.
going on. Yeah, it's fun.
So, where can people go to stay caught up with you and to get the latest news on all that that's going on and release dates and all that? Where can they find you at?
WendyWalkerBooks.com. So it's all one word and just add books at the end of my name. And that's my website. And if you can't find it or have doubts, just find me on social media because I'm always posting about all my stuff there. And I have links as well on my, and mostly my Instagram account. I have all the links there, and that's Wendy Walker Author. So Wendy Walker Books or Wendy Walker Author, you can pretty much find me anywhere.
Well, Wendy, I thank you so much for coming on tonight and carving time into your schedule. The book "What Remains" is amazing. I loved it. I've been reading a lot of military and espionage stuff the last couple of years, but I've tried to just go back to some of those John Grisham type of books and those psychological thrillers, and this was excellent. I loved it. I handed it off to several other people and highly recommended it. So thank you for coming on tonight. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.